What the hell is Portugal giving us? Like, obviously, it's not. It's not.
Now,
competing.
he doesn't mean that. I've gotten so much criticism for saying Cristiano Ronaldo is not in the top 5. I apologize. I love Portugal.
That's another discussion we should get into at some point.
We should do, because you posted a few soccer things. I'm not.
Yeah.
I realize how passionate people are about this. Listen, it was a joke. All right, he deserves to be potentially in the top 5.
Yeah, I love Portugal. And even though I'm a Liverpool fan, I still respect Cristiano Ronaldo a lot. In fact, I hold a very unpopular opinion where I think Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest football player ever.
Number 1 over Pele and Maradona, Messi, better than Messi.
Yes, he's been doing it for 20 years at the top. Nobody's ever done that. He's won everything everywhere he goes, at the top, at the Champions League. Really strong argument to be made for him. And Messi's never done anything outside of Barcelona. That's the thing.
So you appreciate performance long-term versus the genius of the actual play on the field.
I mean, the genius is Ronaldo's the top scorer of all time.
So the genius is in the scoring, not the actual dance of the play, the creativity.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Messi's been absolutely mediocre since he's left Barcelona.
These are strong words.
He scored, 2 goals in PSG's season this year? They're out of the Champions League.
What about Mohamed Salah? You posted about him.
He's my boy.
Is he climbing up to be somewhere
I think he should win the Ballon d'Or this year. He probably should have won it last year as well. He's been absolutely outstanding. But, I mean, just people are so crazy about Messi. They keep giving him accolades. He hasn't deserved, I think, Messi the last couple of Ballon d'Ors that he got. I mean, he's a great player and everything, but no, he did not deserve it last year.
We can agree to disagree. There's something.
You're a Barca fan or a Messi fan?
I would say no. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a Barca fan, but a Barca fan because of Messi. And I think it's like there's certain things. So when I was growing up in the Soviet Union, Russia, I remember Maradona. He was the first person I saw that I was like, oh wow, this could be. This is greatness in sport, not just football and sport, right? And for some reason, I mean, it's something about like Diego Armando Maradona, like the way they were commentating, the genius of his play, the mix of ego, and again the performance, but being able to carry a team on his shoulders. That I just fell in love with whatever he represented, and then by that Argentina. And then Messi, I saw when he was like 16, 17, when he was just like right in the early days. And when you first see a person and you see the genius and you notice that, and then it turns out to be actually a great player, for some reason you're invested. You're emotionally invested. You're, I don't know. So you kind of just fall in love, and then you pick sides. I mean, that's the thing about football. Part of the fun things about football, soccer is like you pick a guy, you pick a team, and fuck everyone else, and you just have fun talking shit. I mean, there's part of it, you know. That
it's great. It's great because I think, you know, obviously it's a very stupid thing to do, but I think if you don't do it in football, you're going to do it in real life.
Elsewhere. That's right.
That's why it's very good. Like that's it. Instead of hating people for their religion and for their skin color, hate them because they support Manchester United.
Exactly. So you're a Liverpool fan. That's
yes, hardcore, long term. But yeah, so to go back to the original point on Portugal,
energy.
Energy. Bitcoin is not competing with Portugal because Bitcoin is buying energy from places where we can't buy it. Because all the places where we can buy energy for our washing machines, we're bidding up the price enough to make it non-viable for Bitcoin. That's why, you'll see those headlines about Bitcoin consuming more energy than Portugal. Well, if you look at Portugal, I mean, they've got giant power plants in Portugal. They've got millions of people and they've got enormous amounts of infrastructure. Where are all of these infrastructure for Bitcoin mining? You don't see it in the cities. It's all isolated. It's all out away from the cities, or it's connected to grids that have serious overcapacity. So Bitcoin is not out there buying the expensive energy, taking energy away from people who can't afford it. It's out there buying its own energy because it doesn't need to buy the expensive energy that people really need.
So one other criticism from an investment perspective, from a gambling perspective that people see is the volatility of Bitcoin. Now, of course, that's been somewhat decreasing over time, but what's your answer to the sort of criticism that Bitcoin is too volatile? I want to stay away. It doesn't seem like a safe place for me to invest either short-term or long-term.
There's no denying there's a volatility and there's a high oscillation in the value in the short term. So I think the safe way to approach that is in terms of position sizing. If the volatility bothers you, then you're overinvested, perhaps. So maybe you should reduce the size of your position so that the volatility doesn't bother you. And this is the short answer. That stack as much as your conviction will allow you to tolerate the volatility. And of course, the reason you should try and consider tolerating the volatility more is the options are you hold fiat assets, which only go down, stable, relatively stable, not a lot of volatility day to day. Value of your dollar doesn't change 40% overnight, 20% overnight or something like that. But it does go down reliably. It's going to go down 40%. You can count on it. It might take a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Compared to the things that you want to buy, it's going to go down by 40%. And it's not going to come back. And it's going to go down another 40%, and then another 40%, and then another 40%. So the option really is relatively short-term stability with long-term decline, or short-term volatility with long-term rise. And so that's another way in which Bitcoin teaches people to have a low time preference and think about the long term. So stack, accumulate, and think of it in the long term. It's a function of the fact that Bitcoin is new. Bitcoin is currently less than 1% of the global money market. So there's about $100 trillion of money out there in the world. Mm-hmm. $100 trillion roughly of fiat and about $10 trillion of gold. And Bitcoin is less than $1 trillion. So one rich guy decides to get into Bitcoin, that's going to show up on the Bitcoin chart. You look at it, Elon Musk decides to buy Bitcoin, you see the buy, you see the news, it happens, and you see the pump. Elon Musk decides that he doesn't like Bitcoin, you see the drop. But, a few years ago, it used to be that one random millionaire would cause that pump. Mm-hmm. Now you have to be the richest guy in the world to do that. Mm-hmm. In a few years, you're going to have to be the richest country in the world to be able to do that to the Bitcoin price. Maybe many years, maybe not a few years. But as Bitcoin grows, think about it as a liquid pool of money. Currently, it's a small pool next to a much larger ocean, which is the entire money market. And so one person jumps from that to this small pool, they can make a big splash. As the pool grows, essentially the salability increases, and the likelihood of one individual purchase affecting the price so violently decreases. And so over time, as the size of the market increases, I think we're going to see the volatility decline more and more. Ultimately, if you look at gold, historically, gold's been very, very stable. It did not achieve its stability because the central bank was in charge of gold supply, or because there was a gold committee that decided how much gold gets produced. It achieved that stability because it became the most saleable good, and so therefore became the good that contains the most cash balances in the world. And at the end of the 19th century, everybody held cash balances in gold, and the new production was a tiny little addition to global production, to the supply. So that's what made gold the most relatively, I shouldn't say stable because nothing is stable in economics, but relatively it holds on to its value, and it's much less volatile than digital currency, than national currencies. That's because it has the highest stock to flow ratio. And that's because its supply is a tiny fraction of the liquid market. And as the liquid market grows, as the size of cash balances grows and trades in Bitcoin cancel each other out, you get only slight changes in value. So I think as Bitcoin matures, that's going to decline. So effectively, I think, the end game is Bitcoin is huge. Bitcoin is worth something like, I think the total addressable market for Bitcoin is not just national currencies and gold's addressable market, but also government bonds. That's the really big one.
So how do bonds compare to gold? So you're saying it'll surpass gold with the 10 trillion.
Yeah.
What's bonds? Where's bonds stand?
So then there's also national currencies, which are about 100 trillion, and then there's government bonds, which are around $120 billion. And trillion.
Trillion, sorry.
Yes.
If we were saying billion, we meant trillion.
Yeah.
So you think bonds can move to Bitcoin?
I've always held this is the prize. This is the main dish. Gold is the appetizer. Bonds are the main dish because bonds have replaced gold. Yeah, I mean, bonds have replaced gold in people's portfolio. People, you remember when we were saying gold was you'd hold it as a saving, as the secure part of your portfolio, and then you take risk with the equity. Currently, people do that by holding a part of their portfolio in bonds. That's the part that they treat as their saving account. And then the rest they use for not speculation, for investment, in which they take risk. Yeah, speculation. And that's stocks and equity and other high-risk assets. I think Bitcoin is not going to replace equity. There will always be equity. There will always be companies and people will want to have equity. But it'll probably replace a big chunk of current equity markets, because right now, if you want to save, it used to be that you hold bonds. Now, if you want to save, you go into stock indexes. So I think Bitcoin likely eats a big chunk of equity markets because currently people are using it as saving. And I think it eats all bonds. That's my most ambitious statement.
The question is the scale of time that happens across, but the most important statement you're making is about trend.
Yeah, and also, I mean, let's also remember, currently bonds nominally don't beat inflation, and in real terms, they don't come close to beating inflation. So currently, with bonds, you're taking on credit default risk to buy a bond and also getting less money back in real terms. Well, Bitcoin doesn't offer you returns, but in real terms, it appreciates much more, and it has, I believe, a lot less risk associated with it than any company or government.
So let's make things spicy and ask if Bitcoin fails in the long-term future, as you just said, economics, volatility, things happen in this world. Mm-hmm. The human civilization might end in this century. I hope it doesn't, but it might. There could be catastrophic events. If Bitcoin fails, it goes to zero, loses its number one spot, what would be the reason? If you're an alien visiting Earth 100 years from now and just were to analyze the situation. Bitcoin is a pretty new thing. So the possible trajectories of how the world evolves together with this new monetary technology is nearly infinite. So if it fails, one of those trajectories surely involves Bitcoin failing. What would be the reason?
I think the most likely reason that it could fail, I don't think this is likely in general, but I think it is the most likely of all the unlikely things that could destroy Bitcoin, is governments go back on a gold standard.
Oh, interesting. So they make, in your view, a better decision than the current system, just not the best decision. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you would go much darker. But so that's, yeah, okay, interesting. So maybe because of Russia, because of China and so on, because of the current war, they might reconsider the power that America holds because of the monetary, because of being the primary currency, and they'll start thinking about going on a gold standard.
Yeah, but it would also require the US and the Europeans and everybody to want to join in this system and sing Kumbaya and play nice with each other around the gold standard. I think, given that gold already is about 10 times larger than Bitcoin, so it has a first mover advantage.
Yes.
If governments were to go and peg their currencies to gold again, the price of gold would shoot up 5-10x, and it would rise in value a lot more.
Of course, that doesn't necessarily kill Bitcoin.
No, again, I'm not saying it's likely to happen. I'm saying I imagine less unlikely than all the other unlikely scenarios. Because, even with a nuclear war, like 90% of the planet is destroyed, the 10% continue to run Bitcoin.
That's a quote.